Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Consulting Between Friends. I am your host, Michael Holmes Jr. When seeking assistance in a particular area, you might consider turning to a nonprofit organization. Nonprofits offers numerous benefits to individuals, such as housing, food banks, and educational resources for voting. Yes, some organizations provide resources for voting education. Many people can relate to more everyday issues than to political topics from candidates. You will be amazed at how closely related everyday issues are to political candidates. The difference lies in how the message is delivered by each group. Everyday people speak in a relatable manner, while political candidates often use jargon that leaves people wondering if they are truly representing the everyday person. In addition, there are nonprofit organizations that advocate for issues that matters to everyday people. These organizations focus on educating large groups of people on the same issues that political candidates discuss. They understand how to make the material relatable to everyday people by breaking it down in a simple way. Some of the issues people are concerned about include jobs, increasing living costs, rising insurance rates, and grocery prices. One organization focuses on educating people to use their voice to create change. Mobilizing Millennials is a nonpartisan group that educates people on their voting rights. In this episode, I will interview J. Christopher Johnson, the founder of the Mobilizing Millennials organization. He will discuss what the organization offers to people and why it's important to him to assist others. The topic is Mobilizing Millennials, a nonprofit organization. We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC. Contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. Before the interview begins, I want to give you some background on J. Christopher Johnson. J. Christopher was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. He is the founding executive director of the Mobilizing Millennials organization, a 501c3 policy think tank embracing civil engagement and political literacy. J. Christopher holds a Bachelor's of Art degree in Political Science from Dillard University and is currently pursuing a Master of Social Work at Dr. Millie M. Charles School of Social Work at Southern University at New Orleans. J. Christopher Johnson is a dynamic leader, speaker, and change maker with a diverse portfolio of expertise spanning activism, strategic planning, and public service. J. Christopher has numerous achievements, such as making history as the youngest candidate to run for Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District in the 2021 special election, and being a keynote speaker at the National AIDS Education and Service for Minorities conference in 2024. His expertise includes being a facilitator, social equity, advocacy, and organizational development specialist. He delivers impactful presentations that engage audiences with passion and insight on civil engagement, social equity, and strategic organizational development. His compelling workshops and training sessions are designed to empower participants and foster meaningful dialogue. We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. My guest is J. Christopher Johnson. Now, welcome to Consulting Between Friends podcast.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's your friend, your neighbor, your champion. It's J. Christopher Johnson, the one and only. What's going on, Michael? Thank you so much for having me on today. Really excited to divulge and get into conversation.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to interviewing you today and learning more about you as well. So, how was your day?
My day was good overall. Responding to some emails. I think this is pretty much the highlight of my day as of right now. Aside from the darkness of it all, looking at the natural disasters that's happening, specifically with these hurricanes and tornadoes. Folks don't believe in climate change, but other than that, today has been a pretty decent day.
Yes, today has been a decent day. And you're right, the hurricanes that's going on right now, for Hurricane Milton, that is something with all those people. And I hope to get to safety and things will be fine. And another thing I realized, I was on your social media earlier. I see you had an event like yesterday. So how did that go?
The event yesterday was good. And so right now I am on the Mobilizing Millennial Civic Engagement, Mobilization, and Empowerment Tour. And so yesterday we made a stop at the New Orleans Pride Center where I presented a presentation entitled Liberate the Ballot. And basically it's a tailored presentation more specifically for the LGBT community and allies as to how to be proactive and engaged in the election cycle. So that was a good experience with them and great participation we had.
Well, that's good. Well, since you just explained that, can you explain your background?
Absolutely. Born and raised in a suburb of New Orleans. I'm born in the last year of the millennials in 1996, so 24 years old. But nonetheless, I am an activist and organizer, a strategic planner, a consultant, a preacher, and the list goes on. But personally, I believe in equity and equality for all people. And so it is very personal that I put myself in a position to advocate and to activate on behalf of those who may not be able to do so for themselves. So I was intentional about getting my degree in political science from Dillard University, the educational jewel of the South and one of the Black Ivy Leagues. to further advance my knowledge as it pertains to how governmental structure and systems work. I'm currently enrolled at the Dr. Milliam Charles School of Social Work, housed at Southern University at New Orleans, to give me more of an introspective look as it pertains to problems dealing with people and challenges dealing with people and how we can bring about effective resolves and how we can also influence policy changes. With that being said, I'm also the founding executive director of the Mobilizing Millennials organization, which I founded in 2019. So we are embarking on 5 years. Our purpose is to recover the fabric, excuse me, our purpose is to train leaders to become civically engaged and politically literate. And so that looks like training, seminars, workshops, technical assistance, assisting other organizations with their advocacy plans, with an emphasis on voting. That's our foundation. And so it's very important that we understand that we do contribute to change when we participate in the process that produces the change. So this fight is very personal for me, but nonetheless, we got to keep on keeping on.
Yes, I totally agree. I like how you explain yourself and your background, and I see you have a lot of things on your plate.
It's a lot going on. It's a lot going on, but I asked God for this, and I won't complain. But I'll figure out how to manage it the best I know how, and let the gifts keep on flowing.
Yes, and I can also see you passionate in what you're doing, and that's what matters.
Absolutely, absolutely. The people come first. Something about the people power, and prioritizing the people. That is what really gets me going, and what I really have a passion for: effectuating change in the lives of people, especially those who are considered marginalized and disenfranchised.
Yes, I totally agree. Well, since you also mentioned about what your organization is, we're about to start the interview. That's going to run into my first question.
Okay.
What is Mobilizing Millennials organization?
So the Mobilizing Millennials organization is a think tank, a policy think tank, as well as a training institute. So as I stated before, we do workshops and seminars, trainings, and facilitations to ensure that we are educating community about how to be involved in systems that affect us on a daily basis. I founded the organization in 2019. I had it with a vision of presenting it like a for dummies thing, a civics for dummies. You remember the dummy series?
Yes, I do remember that.
Okay, I'm not by myself. Okay. So being that, the American curriculum is very much so lackluster, and it does an injustice as it pertains to properly educating our young people. And so I took it upon myself, being that that is so, and this is essentially my background, to basically go into classrooms and talk to young people about being active and being engaged. But nonetheless, we had the George Floyd state sanctioned murder. And I'm a believer that we need to call things out for what it is. He didn't just die, but that was state sanctioned. So we had his murder, and then we had COVID. And so the world was slowing down and had no other obligation but to pay attention to the injustices that were obviously present. And I'm also an alumnus of the New Orleans Youth Alliance, which is a fellowship program designed to prepare young people to sit on nonprofit boards and to effect change in the places that it's most needed. And so I contacted some of my fellow fellowship cohort members, and I said, y'all, we need to do something. I feel like we need to march and do the first Mobilizing Millennials March. And so within about a week and a half, we planned a march and a rally with about 400 people present. And I believe in civil disobedience. And so we met outside of Armstrong Park or Congo Square. The gates were, of course, locked because, like I said, we're still in the middle of COVID. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, there was attention that needed to be brought to a subject and not be swept under a rug. And so we hosted our first Mobilizing Millennials March on Juneteenth, 2020. Thereafter, we held a community town hall where we came together to prepare a policy platform because I don't believe that there should be anything about us without us. And so we crafted a policy platform, and shortly thereafter, we understood that there was a greater need for the type of organization that was seemingly being formed as we were just doing the people's work of bringing a heightened level of attention to injustice, and ensuring that people know that they have a role to play and effectuating change in these processes. But yeah, that's kind of the beginning and the foundation of mobilizing millennials. And we are here nearly 5 years later, still doing what we're doing, even on a greater level.
Well, I like how you explain yourself with your organization, Mobilizing Millennials. And I do remember hearing about your march. I actually started following you on social media, but I did not know who was putting on this march. But it
Hey,
turned out it was really good. And it was on the news
that's
and
right.
here in New Orleans as well. So you did a great job. And at that
Thank you.
time period, that is what people wanted to do. People wanted to show their support in with the stuff that was going on with George Floyd and then injustice things that was going on in America. And so you was able to give people that opportunity with everything going on with COVID.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Michael. I'm glad that you finally figured out the man behind the move.
Mhm. Yes. I do a lot of research.
Good, good.
Since you founded Mobilizing Millennials, what has been your focus for continuing?
The educational component. I think that I know that education and knowledge and wisdom is something that no man can take away from you. And unfortunately, especially when we are paying attention to the Southern and conservative states, there is so much work being done to adjust our curriculums to where we are left in the dark, to where we do not know how to function as citizens in an American society. And so, if you heard me in the beginning when you asked me about our purpose and all of that good jazz, I was going into something else because that was our original purpose, which was to recover the fabric of true American democracy while promoting social equity and economic mobility. I believe that when we are looked alike on a level playing field, regardless of socioeconomic class, however, still needing the equal opportunities of economic mobilization. When we marry those things, we'll have a greater society. But nonetheless, education is a focal point as we cultivate leaders and train people to engage in the political process, to engage in civic engagement, to engage in literacy and understanding. And so we are not limited to the demographics in which we serve. I know the name is Mobilizing Millennials. However, it was just named that because we had the largest voting power at the time. Now it's Gen Z. And so just think about when we take the numbers together of both demographics and populations and generations of people, just imagine how combustible we'll be in creating change and walking in what it is that our ancestors fought so hard for us to have. But definitely, we emphasize that engagement part and the mobilization part of it all to be proactive in the decision making process.
So you mostly focus on the education and you want people to know exactly what they're doing and give them a way to actually go ahead and work further on what they would like to do with the organization or anything else. So the mobilizing part is really important because since I learned I'm also a community organizer. Mobilizing people creates power. And then also mobilizing people is what takes the time and the effort, what some people don't realize.
Mhm. That's right. The reality is that while we are sleeping, they have other folks who are working. And so when we wake up and we are being reactionary and complaining about decisions and things that are already in play, we have to understand that there's a group of people who is relentless in ensuring that there's a certain agenda that they have that's successful, that diminishes the integrity and the worthiness of those who are considered most marginalized and disenfranchised. And so, yeah, the mobilization part is so important because if we stop, just imagine how much further opposition would be to progress and to change. And so it's very pertinent that folks understand that though the fight may get tiring, that we have to
Mm-hmm.
keep on being persistent and be consistent in our efforts because I'm a believer in hope. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
care how dark the days may look, there is still life and breath inside of me. And there is a legacy to be carried on for generations to come. And I just am excited to continue investing in the beauty of New Orleans, of people in Jefferson Parish, of people in the state of Louisiana, and ultimately people in the United States of America, as we are not limited in New Orleans, but we're based here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do like that you have this organization, Mobilizing Millennials. And another thing about it is, I like that people now, especially our generation and under, are willing to fight for all different things that matters to them. Because really, that is important. It kind of went away for a little bit, but nowadays people just don't want to don't want to basically what they believe in, don't want the other person, other people to not struggle whatever they're trying to do.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm,
I'm a believer that what doesn't have a direct effect on you has an indirect impact on you. And it is not too long before what happens at your neighbor's house knocks at your front door. And so I'm really glad that we have a generation of people, more specifically Gen Z, who thinks
mhm,
outside of their own confines or thinks outside of their own struggle and really take an overall look in a perspective and a historical perspective as to the injustices that plague the United States of America. And so when we talk about young people who are not going to take certain conditions on a job, no, it's not because they are lazy or they don't want to work, but they do understand that the level in which you want me to work, the things in which you are requiring, and the benefits that I'm not receiving, I'm being taken advantage of. And
mhm,
or and not unfortunately, uh, parallel to that, you have another generation who believes in benefits and not saying that we don't, but believe in being stationary in one place for, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, retiring
mhm,
off of that job and just having that sense of traditionalism. We're in a new day and time. And so I'm really, really excited about how invigorated our young people so happen to be.
mhm. Yes, I can agree with that. Because this day and age, the things you can't do the same things your parents did, not anymore.
That's right. No, we're in a different time and we got to do different methods. Absolutely.
Yes, I totally agree with that. The presidential election is approaching us. What do you think the most critical issues are in your peer group?
As of now, there are three things that are specifically there, and I know folks are thinking that student loan debt is there, which it is, but it seems that as time has gone on, the focus on that has just gone down the totem pole of going down in rank. Nonetheless, affordable housing, livable
Mhm,
wages, and environmental sustainability are top priority. We're looking at uh, entities that participate in intentional price gouging. We're having jobs that are requiring certain levels of education, but are only offering you pennies in contrast to what it is that you are worth. And then we also have a government who doesn't believe in climate change. And
mhm,
so, no, specifically down here, when we think about Louisiana and we think about Cancer Alley or that stretch between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, we have to think about uh, the disadvantages, more specifically toward Black folk who work down there, who may not have health care, where there isn't a hospital, where there are so many factories out there that's emitting so many fumes and causing disarray amongst workers and community. Uh, and when you have a government who ignores environmental protections, something is wrong. Something is
mhm,
wrong. And so those are some of the main focal points. Folks need a place to lay their head. Rent is astronomical. We do need a rent cap. We need a national rent cap. And then also, as it pertains to livable wages, the state of Louisiana, we don't have a minimum livable wage or minimum wage. We go by the national standpoint of $7.25. And then it's even much less than that for tipped wages and has been that way for 30 years. And more
Mm,
specifically, in our state legislature, has there been folks in both the House and the Senate that has attempted to introduce legislation that will provide a minimum wage of $10 and then gradually increase um, over time, but nonetheless, those things get shut down. But these are things that are most pressing to people. And these areas of challenge do not have bias as it pertains
mhm,
to who it will affect and who it will impact. But nonetheless, we do know that Black and Brown folk are treated much differently and are on the receiving end of many of the harsh realities that are being inflicted from legislatures all over, citywide, whether it's your city council, statewide, whether it's your state legislatures or general assemblies, and then ultimately in Congress. We got to do better at prioritizing the needs of the people, creating a sustainable plan, and ensuring that we don't go back to a place that
mhm.
destitute for many people just trying to live their best life.
Yes. And as all those different issues are really important to a lot of people, and they are really the top priorities that people are thinking about right now to who they want to support for president, which is going to be a really tough race. I can already see that. But since you be in the community with your organization mobilizing millennials, I realized you had an event at Xavier. So how did that go? And did it had any students come up to you and ask you certain questions that was concerning to them?
Yeah, so there was an event at Xavier University, and I'll be respectful about that because they are our rivals, from Dillon University. But I'm gonna go ahead and be respectfully polite because they did extend an invitation. But nonetheless, a few weeks ago, I did have the opportunity to be at Xavier University to speak to the young people as well as table the event. And it was an effort amongst Xavier, Gillard, and Suno, or the area of historically Black universities. And
Mm,
it was a really good opportunity. And I was really excited to see how many young people were actually excited and energized about this election. I think that it is so blatant and plain in our face, the things that are going on and the things that are happening. Young people are understanding that we have to participate.
mhm,
We have to be on the front lines. And so while there wasn't anything specific somebody had to ask me, there was the desire to participate in the efforts of mobilizing millennials to further educate young people, to further get a message out of mobilization, and to further empower us to take charge of what it is that we desire to see for ourselves.
mm. No, all that is really good, and it's good that they were willing to learn and willing to participate, because that's what matters to keep on going, whatever is going on throughout generation.
That's right.
And right now, people realize that more. Well, since this presidential election is very important, things have changed several months ago. First, it was Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Now it's Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So since you have been also out there, has people been asking you like, um, what should they kind of do if they don't understand like different candidates or in general?
Yeah, there is an intentional thing going on to where folks are separated from the realities of the value systems and the policies that have set or will be set in place with certain folks in office. Uh, Nonetheless, I have noticed a heightened energy when Vice President Kamala Harris assumed the Democratic nomination for President of the United States of America. There has been questions just in general about how do we know who is for us? And Mobilizing Millennials is a a nonpartisan organization. So we do not operate on any levels advancing any particular parties or any person. However, we do emphasize doing your research and doing it so on a credible source or from a
Mhm.
credible source. There's so much misinformation out here. It's such a disillusionment out here. There's so much fake news out here and propaganda that it is imperative that we educate ourselves. AI is doing a wondrous thing, especially on
Mhm.
social media and creating false narratives. And so we do emphasize that you do your own research. You ask Chat GPT about policy platforms. It's that easy. Put in your prompt and just see uh, what person or policies rather you most align with. One thing about me is that I'm not a person who deals with people, but I deal with policy. I want to know
Mhm.
what it is that you want to put in place that is ultimately going to affect the lives of the American people on a daily basis. And so as I've iterated, we do emphasize that folks prioritize credible sources and educate themselves on the folks running for office.
Since you mentioned you're nonpartisan, for my listeners, do you mind explaining what that is, please?
So, being nonpartisan and being a nonprofit organization, it means that we cannot take action in political sides as it pertains to Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Independent Party, the Libertarian Party. We cannot support specifically or endorse specifically any party or any candidate. Everybody is allowed to do their own education and do what it is that's best for them. If we were a private entity, that might look differently. However, my focus is that we have people to participate in the election process. I don't want to tell you who to vote for, but I do want to tell you that uh, as a result of the death of some people's ancestors, that we have the right to vote today, and it is essential that we participate in the electoral process.
I can totally agree with that as well. Now, another thing what I heard you mention about the young people,
Yeah.
do you find it very interesting that people rely on their news information by social media? And I know that's the thing how everything is, but like you also did mention about misinformation. With this political race going on, um, it is kind of interesting how stuff has been flowing around as well. But that's just how the generation is, and I understand that. But do you find it very interesting that the news source is becoming from there?
We're in a different time. Organizing back then looks different than organizing today.
Mhm.
Campaigning back then looks differently than campaigning today. Back in the day, you just knocked on doors. You had organizations endorse you, and people endorse you, and that was the end all be all. However, we have to understand that we're in a new day and time, and we have to be intentional about meeting people where they are. And so we already know that from these generations that there's a lot of screen time being used on social media. So what do? You meet people where they are. And it's not like they're
Mhm.
only getting their information from social media. There is a thing called the internet that you can use on your phone. You do have smartphones, you know. And
Mhm.
so I bring that up because you often have people of more senior generations who say young people just stay in their phones or young people are wasting their minds. You know, young people are being much more efficient as it pertains to how we're grabbing this information and this content. We don't have to have the 40 something volume encyclopedias to buy one by one to get our information that in the next 5 years it's going to be expired, right? So
Mhm.
we do have
Mhm.
a platform. We do have a platform that allows us to stay current and up to date. But we're just in a new day and time, and I do believe meeting people what they are.
Yeah, I can agree with that as well. The only thing about it is people just got to know how to find the right sources to get information they're looking for. Some people know how to do it, and some people don't. That is why groups like you and other ones that's out there are out there to help these individuals, correct?
That's right. That's right. And another thing that I would like to emphasize is being cognizant of those uh, election interference type of endeavors
Mhm.
as it pertains to how one is influenced. Be sure that you are not ingesting uh, information, like I said, that is not credible. There are many things that happen online, on the internet, on social media that is so convincing that you will think is real and it ain't. So I want to pay particular attention to that and place a greater emphasis on that, that we have a sense of discernment and a personal sense of just educating our own self without relying upon the interpretation of somebody else.
Mhm. Yes, I can agree with that. What are some of the organizations Mobilizing Millennium has supported and teamed up with?
The Ashe Cultural Arts Center is an organization that we have partnered with. They have an organization called, I believe it's the Young Fierce Citizens. Don't quote me on that, but be sure that
Mhm,
you all look it up. But nonetheless, it is a program designed to assist young people in developing their skill set in the areas of civic engagement. And along with them, it is also a partnership with the SPLC, or the Southern Poverty Law Center, to bring about a greater awareness and to, like I said, to educate our young people on the civic engagement process. Aside from that, we've also partnered with PFLAG NOLA. PFLAG NOLA is an LGBT affirming organization, and we've done workshops and trainings with them as well. Uh, Forum for Equality, we are just very much so close in partnership with them. Crescent Care, which is a healthcare organization in the city of New Orleans, we've done many events with them. Central St. Matthew United Church of Christ, we have partnered with them as well. So we are being intentional about having a well-rounded connection with people from all walks, all demographics.
mhm,
I don't believe in being siloed. So we are in the religious and spiritual community. We are in the nonprofit community, the healthcare community, the LGBTQ plus community. Because, like I said, we got to meet folk where they are, and we have
mhm,
to be inclusive about what diversity looks like and what
mhm,
policies look like that reflect the diversity of the people.
mhm. Yes, I can agree with that. And I like the different groups you have also mentioned. Another thing was, um, I know you always did good work, and I have actually seen you do work online, but I'm glad I had the opportunity to meet you at the Jeremiah group. I'm a Jeremiah member, and you came over there to join in what we were working on. So that was really good. So I got to learn more about you then. Just wanted to put that out there.
Oh no, I appreciate you. Yeah, I assisted where I could with the Jeremiah group. They did a good job. I believe it was September 28th for their parish-wide voter registration drive at multiple locations, over 20 something locations in Jefferson Parish. And I had the distinct honor of drafting the messaging for uh, that particular campaign, and being sure that we are not changing our messaging, but personalizing and owning an experience with different demographics, right? You're not going to be worried about decriminalizing marijuana, and you are simultaneously worried about Social Security being cut off. You know, those are different attention grabbers for different demographic
Yes.
generations. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
it was very important that I was intentional about separating the appeal to the demographics, because you have to appeal to people, and
Hmm.
you have to appeal to people's hearts, and have to appeal to people's understandings as to how they will be personally impacted.
Yes. And you did a great job of doing that.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you was able to be a part of what the Jeremiah group was working on.
Yes, shout out to them.
I see as you focus on diversity and equality for everyone, how have you worked in the community to inform and educate people on equality?
Equality. That is very much so an interesting conversation. Uh, we're not limited, like I said, in the state of Louisiana. And so I've been doing much traveling and doing many presentations outside of the state. I just came in town from speaking in Atlanta. In June, we presented at the NASM National Conference for Social Justice and Men's Health and Disparities. And we have been all over the North Shore. Uh, we've been on the South Shore. But I would want to bring a greater emphasis not to equality, but equity, because equality just means that we get the same thing or we get the same amount of the thing. But equity says that there is some sort of fairness in a system, right? Because everybody is not starting off the same. Everybody does not have
Mhm.
the same socioeconomic background. Everybody is not capacitated with having an educational requirement for this particular job. It just so happens that there are things that do separate us, but that creates the beauty and the diversity of us as people. And so there's a greater sense of equity that I put on uh, my messaging than equality, because equality, you oftentimes be overlooked. You oftentimes won't be provided with the necessities of life that you may need. And so going around and going on tour and having conversations with people and partnering with organizations and just instilling a sense of self-confidence within people to understand that you deserve all that you deserve. It's been a rewarding journey, but that's how we get this thing going on around, not diminishing the beauty and the value of equality, but placing a good emphasis on what equity looks like.
Mhm. Yes, that's really important. Since you say you have traveled those different other places as well, do you enjoy traveling and talking about what you believe in?
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm in Los Angeles, doing the same thing. And so we have to understand that this fight is not limited in location. And it's very
Mhm,
important that people understand the issues that are going on in the South. And in general, that people understand how they can mobilize their efforts in their respective capacities, wherever they may be. And so it is a rewarding experience when I'm able to educate people on civic engagement, uh, policy, on mobilization efforts. It's really rewarding that I'm able to do that and be able to travel and do that is something that I'm proud of.
well, I also noticed when I was looking over information about you, I realized you also, enjoy speaking and having different speaking engagements.
Yes, yes. I have fun with that. People energize me. I've been a speaker for some time now. I started out in the church. I'm pretty sure people can hear the undertones, and no matter where I speak, I can't run from the pulpit. So that's just so happens to be what it is. I had a professor in college, in undergrad, who would say, "Mr. Johnson, I need you to get off the pulpit and get on the podium." But nonetheless, it's just my cadence, and I want people to understand that you all need to personalize and own your experiences and own your gifts, and be stewards of your gifts. But nonetheless, I love seeing the energy of people when they understand aha moments, or they see, like yesterday when I did a
Mhm,
training, when I explained policy and explaining it from a vantage point that it does not have to be intimidating. If there's a problem and you have a solution, that's policy, period.
mhm.
Right. And so I think that it just looks much more or seems much more complex than what it is. And it's absolutely not. And so when I have the opportunity to break things down and analyze things for people and folks get that aha moment, it's a really good feeling.
Mhm. Yes, it really is a good feeling. And since I'm here interviewing you, I have noticed that. And another thing is that when people understand what people are saying when they actually speaking, more people pay attention. So you have to know how to get the information to them, and that's really important.
Even though that might be just a bit of my neural divergence kicking in and trying to cover all bases and things. Also, people don't be afraid to say that you're neurodivergent, because ain't nothing wrong with that. We're very gifted people. But yes, it is very important that people understand things in a different lens, or see things in a different lens than they otherwise might not have if they were walking through the fog. Uh,
Mhm.
because we have some cloudy days, we have some dark days when we think about the time that progress in both should arrive. Uh, but we got to keep on going. We got to keep
Mhm.
on pushing. We got to keep on understanding that there is something on the inside of us that cannot, will not, and shall not die. And there's a certain love and hope that we should have that be unwavering to our commitment to progress. And if not for nobody else, do it for yourself.
Mhm. That's really what matters. You have to believe in yourself before you're able to do anything else.
That's right. That's right.
Voting should be important to everyone. Why do you believe some people choose not to vote?
People believe that vote don't count. And I tell people your vote don't count because you don't count your vote. It is very intentional the way in which tactics are being used to suppress voter outreach and voter participation. And then there's also the thing of people not understanding governmental systems. And that's where mobilizing millennials steps in, right?
Mhm,
Understanding how a bill becomes a law, understanding how certain things need to pass. For example, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act has been passed in the House of Representatives by Congress, right? But it has
mhm,
not been passed or introduced in the Senate. We have to pay attention that there are different policy agendas that the two major parties have. And it's a reason that certain policies may get supported in contrast to others. And so it may not be until you have Democratic leadership in the Senate to
mhm,
introduce that, or Democratic majority in the Senate to introduce that, to pass that, for it to be signed by the next president of the United States of America. So just understanding how that works and understanding when laws go into effect. Oftentimes we don't care about them until it knocks on our front door, and we should be
mhm,
much more cognizant about changes, right? So especially thinking about factually in January of this year, the newly elected conservative governor called a special session on crime. While it did not address the root causes of crime, it did emphasize a punishment for the people of Louisiana. And ultimately, those laws and books will affect certain demographics more than others. Nonetheless, there was a particular bill that passed, and they call it constitutional carry, to where you can carry a concealed weapon without the use of a permit or a license. And that happened on July 4th. And it wasn't about happenstance that that happened July 4th. All right. But we have to pay attention to when things go into effect. There are many things that went into effect August 1. There's a particular voter suppression law that went into place that says that if you want to do a voter registration drive, that you have to get it approved by the Secretary of State's office. These are voter suppression tactics. These are things that we work and fight against on a daily basis. But we gotta be proactive in this thing. Elections are determined by small margins often. I've seen races, particularly in the New Orleans district, the city council race, the last one, where it was a margin of 63 votes that determined the vote. So just imagine, y'all, if those numbers turned up on the other side, what that would look like, right? And so every vote counts. I know that uh, it seems that change is taking forever to reveal itself, but we have a power, and our power is our vote. The reality is those of us who don't vote that creates the policies that we're faced with now, right? And
mhm.
so I believe it was statewide, statewide or citywide. I want to say it was statewide in the past election that 22% of registered voters showed up to the polls. That tells me 78% of people who didn't show up are the ones who determine the persons or the people who have been elected. There's an issue there. And so, like I said in the beginning of this interview, or in the middle of the interview, whenever I said it, your vote don't count because you don't count your vote.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, people don't realize their vote can count, but it really does count. And another thing is with people about elections, what I have also noticed, some people think they only should vote for the presidential election, but people don't realize that your local elections are the ones that really pertains to your everyday life.
Um, Local elections play a greater direct emphasis as it pertains to when things will be enacted, and you can just feel the effects much quicker. However, I do bring attention to the presidential election because I think we often forget what it looks like to have issues arise and we're wondering why they're arising and from where they're arising. There is something called the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. There is somebody who was the Secretary of Education. There is somebody who was the Secretary of Homeland Security. These people are people who are political appointees, excuse me, presidential appointees by the sitting president. And these people are senior advisors advising the president and making decisions in those respective capacities. More specifically, we think about the uh, student loan debt forgiveness plan that President Biden
Mhm,
wants to enact. It was put on hold until last week when it was in a Georgia court, and then it got transferred to a Missouri court. And then that looked like a small victory for like 6 hours until the Missouri court held up the decision. We have to understand that the previous administration was able to appoint so many judges, federal judges, that have much power in the decision making process, and ultimately it affects the entire United States. And so when we think about the president, we have to also think about what that trickle down effect will look like. All right. When we
mhm,
think about abortion or abortion access or things dealing with marijuana or things dealing with diabetes medication, whatever the case may be, when those things eventually get to a federal appeals court, the reality is that that judge had been appointed by some president. Some president had a particular way in which they went about things, and they put people in those seats that are confirmed by the Senate. They put people in those seats who best align with their own policy ideals, even though the judiciary is supposed to be a non-biased uh, department. Uh, we know what happens, right? Law is up
mhm,
to the interpretation of the person behind the bench, and that's just
mhm,
the reality of it all. And so, yes, local elections do matter. Absolutely, please participate. And I know it seems like in Louisiana and New Orleans and Jefferson Parish, we vote 10 times a year. Go vote, okay? Because you might have a millage on there or a tax on there, and you're wondering why your bill, so your water bill just so happen to be going up every month. Well, baby, you didn't go and click that button, whether you should approve or deny this tax, right?
mhm,
And then it gets approved. But while local and state elections and voting matters, so does the presidential race as well, because then you have delegates who are there. And mind you, while we just statistically, while the state of Louisiana so happens to be a red state, there are Democratic delegates that do contribute to the amount of delegation numbers
mhm.
that is acquired by the Democratic nominee, right? So all of it does matter. It does take a particular look as it pertains to how it matters or the time frame in which you will feel some of the things that are happening, but um, place great emphasis on all these elections.
Yes, I can totally agree with that as well. But some people don't believe they should vote, but your local elections are really important because the presidential election is only every 4 years.
That's right.
But you have stuff that's in your current state, in your current city, that is really important that people don't really pay attention to. And so say like when people say like, oh, the schools are not good where I live, or there's potholes in my street, that focus on where you live. In other words, your mayor or your
That's right.
state.
That's right. So
That's
think
that's
of
not the information for the presidential election.
Well, let's think about how funding is appropriated into what it's appropriated to, because that's dealing a lot with infrastructure. And so when you see bridge
Oh,
lights
yeah,
out,
that's true. Hmm.
on the bridge in New Orleans, you need to go ahead and contact city council. Something needs to happen, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but nonetheless, with that being said, even though this is a topic of conversation, y'all, we got to do the census. We're not going to see it for another 6 years, but we got to do the census because it is counting the people that's in your house, ultimately counting the people who are in the area, and that ultimately impacts the amount of dollars that gets invested in those areas. So we got to be very cognizant of us participating in the census process as well.
That is really important. Why did you choose to start your own nonprofit?
Yeah. That wasn't the plan. That was not the plan. And starting off, I've always been around nonprofits, worked nonprofits, um, but haven't founded one. I'm really understanding the inner workings of the nonprofit and the intricacies of the nonprofit. But nonetheless, this was not the plan. Like I said, we started off with a march. We then had a town hall meeting, and I didn't realize that we would be officializing ourselves. But nonetheless, we're here. I even had thoughts of making it its own political party, right? But just think we would have to get on all state rosters and all of that. I just don't feel like doing that type of organizing as of right now. However, it wasn't my plan to do this. It so happened to generate itself as we were just doing the work and develop itself as we were doing the work. So it wasn't necessarily in my plan. I do have a heart for people, and much of my work, even to this day, is in the nonprofit world, aside from my own nonprofit. And so it's important that we are doing the work that is closest to the people, uh,
Mhm,
that will ultimately drive some type of personal change in their lives. And I'm a believer that you wouldn't have the need for all of these nonprofits if people were legislating on your behalf, right? Like
mhm, mhm,
nonprofits are that middleman or that sense of relief somewhere that is trying to provide some type of resources to you because it's not being done by the government, right? And so, yeah, yeah, I started it because there was a need for our organization in New Orleans. Yes, there are other like organizations, but as it pertains to the direct interaction and the direct educational component of it all, we don't have that aside from mobilizing millennials. And so it's something that I take personal that we understand. Like I said, the processes that affect us on a daily basis, that we understand how civics impact us, that we understand how policy impacts us as well. So ultimately, it was inevitable that mobilizing millennials would be uh, mobilizing millennials. We did start off as the mobilizing millennials movement. And now we are the mobilizing millennials organization as we have officialized ourselves to keep on doing what it is that we're doing to empower people to empower themselves.
mhm. Yes. Well, another thing, since you also I mentioned about nonprofit, people just don't realize how important nonprofits are to them, and some don't even know about what's around them. Can you agree with that?
No, I definitely can. And there are hundreds of nonprofits, hundreds. But they have various services and various purposes, right? And so if you
Mm,
need assistance with housing or transitional housing, there's something for that. If you need assistance with a reentry, somebody who was formerly incarcerated, normalizing their existence back in the free world, there are nonprofits for that. Nonprofits for housing insecurities. There are just so many things that avail themselves to us that oftentimes we don't know about. And we often have a lot of the smaller grassroots organizations that need some of the most support, like Mobilizing Millennials. So if there's a funder listening, go ahead and contact us. It is tax exempt. But there is much opportunity for people to benefit from the services in which these nonprofit organizations provide.
I see you are an advocate in the community. What motivates you to pursue your purpose in life?
I believe my personal purpose in life is to assist others identify and develop theirs. And so I get a personal joy when I see people advancing in life, both personally and corporately. It does something to the servant heart of mine to see that what it is that I am saying is creating an impact. And I love being in the position to effectuate change however I can. And I've always been a motivational speaker, an inspirational speaker. And so the essence of one being self empowered is a beautiful thing. I neglected to mention that I'm also a personal fitness trainer as well, and to have people notice that they have committed themselves to seeing results. And sometimes they might not in a month, they might not see it until we go back and we look over some things and we pay attention. These numbers look a little bit differently. Do you see what you've done? Let's go ahead and reflect on what it is that you have done. And so the total sense of empowering people to understand that they are powerful is something very personal for me, and it just has a feel good feeling within my heart.
And that's really what matters. People have to find their purpose, and when they find their purpose, things seem to work a little easier.
And walk in it. Don't be scared. Walk in it. And your purpose is going to look differently than somebody else's purpose. Baby, it don't matter. You go ahead and you do what it is that God of the universe has called you to do and do it unapologetically and don't let anybody stop you. We are all going through this thing called life by ourselves, and nobody received a manuscript. All anybody can do is provide an example as to how they went through their life. Uh, However, go ahead and chase after you and go after what destiny has in store for you.
Yes, I can agree with that. Well, we have come down to the last question.
Oh man, I was having fun.
What advice would you give someone interested in starting their own organization or nonprofit?
Nike didn't pay me, but just do it. Just just do it. And the reality is that your vision is just that. It's your vision. That means that other people may not be able to see what it is that you see, but that's okay. Just do it. Oftentimes, it's not until that you're actually doing the work that people are seeing what you're doing and they want to jump on it. You go ahead and you do it, but you maintain your integrity. Uh, don't let anything scare you. If you have to do it alone, do it alone. If you have to do it scared, do it scared. If your voice trembles, your voice trembles. But go ahead and do it. You'll have people who pick up and who let down along the way. And I know it will get frustrating and it does get tiring. But the reality is that uh, there is something that obviously came to your mind that you said that you need to provide a fix or be a contribution to, and only you can do it in the way in which you can do it. For example, there's all kind of breads on the shelf. I like Nature's Own Honey Oat. Somebody else might like Bunny Bread White or Texas Toast, whatever the case may be. Though it's the same thing, different appeals, different brands, different people. So it doesn't matter who may be doing something like you or the same thing. There's nobody who can do what you do, how you do it. And so if it is your goal of yours to formulate your own organization or nonprofit, do it and don't let nothing get in your way.
Yes, I can definitely agree with that. If you feel like you're passionate what you're doing and you believe you want to give back in some kind of way, you should go ahead and do what you believe in because that really what matters the most.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that was the last question for the interview. Can you let my listeners know your contact information?
Absolutely. So you can find us at www.mobilizingmillennials.org. That's millennials with an S. You can find us on social media at Mobilizing Millennials on all platforms except Twitter or X. I still haven't jumped on that bandwagon with this Moby Millennials. And you can follow me personally. Go to my website, www.christopherjohnson.com, or follow me on my social media platforms at JCJFORLA.
Well, J. Christopher Johnson, I enjoyed interviewing you today on Consulting Between Friends, and I know my listeners are going to enjoy this interview.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. I'm really appreciative of everything in which you're doing to get the word out and to just educate your listeners. Your platform is valuable, and it is something that I encourage you to keep on keeping on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for being a guest on Consulting Between Friends podcast. In closing, I hope the information was valuable to my listeners. J. Christopher Johnson explained why he is passionate about assisting and educating others in his craft. The work that Mobilizing Millennials offers to others has dramatically impacted the community. I am glad I had the opportunity to interview J. Christopher Johnson and learn more about him and his profession. My listeners, I hope you can support what J. Christopher Johnson has to offer as an activist and an organizer. One last thing, remember to support local businesses, and providing knowledge to others is essential for success. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Everyone, please look for early voting in your area. Your vote matters, so get out and vote. Thank you for listening to Consulting Between Friends. This podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, as well other platforms that are available. So like and subscribe. Need to contact us and leave us a comment? You can find us on Instagram at Consulting the letter B Friends. Once again, Consulting B Friends. An email address is consulting the letter B Friends at gmail.com. Once again, consulting B Friends at gmail.com. Thanks again for your support. If you have an extra minute, it would be greatly appreciated if you could answer a few questions regarding the quality of the podcast. The link will be in the description. Consulting Between Friends. Thanks to everyone for making this possible. The host, Michael Holmes Jr., the producer and content creator, Michael Holmes Jr., cover art by Michael Holmes Jr., original music, a DJ named Slash, special guest, J. Christopher Johnson, founding executive director of Mobilizing Millennials organization, content distributor, my producer, podcasting.